Sorry, folks, I'm a little shaky sometimes. Okay, we'll call this meeting to order. Adoption of the agenda, moved by Councillor Danch, second by Councillor Elliott. The meeting to consider agenda dated April 23rd, 2024 be confirmed as circulated. If any councillor has any questions about the agenda, please raise your hand now. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Disclosures of interest. Any councillor have a disclosure of interest? None? Thank you. We will proceed with item 4.1, Wignall Municipal Drain Meeting to consider 2024-85. Drainage Superintendent Alana Vanderveen is in attendance to respond to council's questions following the engineer's presentation. Moved by Councillor Aguilera, seconded by Councillor Bruno.
Yes.
All in favor? Carried. So no written submissions pertaining to this item have been received by the clerk's office. If I can call on Alana Vanderveen to kind of lay out what the meeting's about tonight.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Hi, I'm Alana Vanderveen, Drainage Superintendent here for the city. Have been for a little while, working on these reports to get them to the point that we're at tonight. So just a little bit before I introduce Paul Marsh, the engineer who has prepared the report. The notice that was sent in the mail, I had a number of phone calls, a little bit of confusion about a petition that may or may not have been signed. So in this particular drainage report, the municipality was the only one that signed a petition. We had some roads that drained across private property, which is not very neighborly to flood out your neighbor. So we're rectifying that through the Drainage Act, and we've petitioned for branch drains, which Mr. Marsh will describe all of those and get to that further in his presentation. So the reminder of the evening is that at this meeting we can't, council cannot do anything regarding the assessments as they're shown in the report. Tonight is for council to accept or reject the report. Should they accept the report, then we will go through the steps of the Drainage Act where each individual owner has the option to petition. Notification will be sent to you on all of that, so you don't have to worry about panicking and not knowing what to do. You will get information. And so those appeal options will be the Court of Revision, which is typically comprised of 3 of our council members, and then is followed by a tribunal which is held at the provincial level. So on that, one other thing. After Mr. Marsh is done with his presentation and council has asked questions and we're wrapping up, if you still feel that you have some questions then and aren't necessarily council worthy or needed to be heard by council, Mr. Marsh and I will be available in the back room for any questions afterwards. And on that, I will let Mr. Marsh speak and present his project.
Thanks, Alana. Council, members of the public. Okay, we're good there. I've been working on this report for a significant amount of time, and I'm very happy to have arrived at this spot in time. And how do I advance? Do I just... Okay. This is our agenda. We're going to do a brief introduction. I'm going to talk about the Wignall in general terms. I'm going to talk about the design basis for why we are doing what we're doing. I'm going to talk about past constructed works that are in the report. And I'm going to talk about the proposed works, what the cost of that is, and how it's assessed to everyone in the watershed. And at the very end, then we'll open it for questions and answers. Yep. So before me, this project's been going on for 20 years, since about 2003. The original engineer was part of Weeb Engineering, appointed and ceased operation in 2008. The second engineer to work on it was from AMEC. They started in 2013, and they ceased working on drainage projects in 2017 when that appointed engineer left the employ of that company. I was appointed in 2018, so by pretty simple math, I've been working on this for 6 years. On the left, my left, your left, yes, is a topo map from 1910, and it shows the Wignall drain in a very clear way, going up and going to the east. And it shows another, what I will call a drain, going out through the edge of the canal at Port Colborne there. The previous drainage superintendent had suggested we call that upper arm the Port Colborne drain. And so you can see that report has already been presented and gone through tribunal. And the same for the Michener drain. Both of those use the Wignall drain as their outlet, and both of those reports have gone forward and been heard by the tribunal. This report covers the entire watershed, so it's the remaining part of the Weeb drain, plus the other two parts of the drain. As part of me delivering the report, there's been 3 studies prepared. The baseline report was completed in 2018, and it's basically a problem statement. It basically says, here's what we know from history, here's what are known as problems on the drain to be solved in the report, and then that goes forward, and there is a watershed analysis report. It's computer modeling, and it uses standard computer hydrology to predict what the design flows should be. And then you can see in the main report, there's 3 versions. I've had this done 3 different times and gone back and made revisions. The March 31st revision was in response to changes in the quarries application. And the last revision was in response to the tribunal hearing the Port Colborne report. So this report is prepared according to all the other tribunal recommendations. And one more. This is a map from 1930, and it shows generally what the watershed looked like at that time. And you can see it's small farm fields. And if you go to the next button, and the next one, that's the drain. This is what it looks like today. The golf course is visible. There are still farm fields there, but some of the farm fields in the lower reach are vacant. They're not being actively farmed anymore. And I want to point out there's 3 major events in this drain's kind of recent history life. The one is 1969. There was a report by C.J. Clark, and it set this lower reach, everything below the Friendship Trail, to a grade of 0 to the gates at the lake. And so it hasn't had any slope since 1969. It's a flat drain. And then in 79, RVA did some reports north of the Friendship Trail, and so we have some drawings of stuff that was done there. And the other 2 major events were a pump being constructed on or about 1978 at the outlet, and I think that's it. Yes. So our design basis is in hydrology what we call a 1 in 5 year storm, and for me in the design it's a synthetic storm. This S curve that's shown on there is the shape of the storm, and what I want to communicate with the S curve is that middle part is where all the rain is happening. And then on this, on the right-hand side of the screen, there's an actual storm from July 17th, 2021. All of the orange lines that go up and down, That's the intensity in a 5-minute interval that the rain is arriving at. And then this graph on the side that looks like a little hill, that's the version of this S-craft. And you can see in the middle, there's quite a little jump, and that indicates there's a lot of rain arriving in a short amount of time. And the blue diamond on this bottom one here, because the storm, these two charts help us to put the statistics of past rain events compared to this rain event. And it's somewhere between a 25-year storm and a 50-year storm, just to give some context. The total amount of rain that was delivered was just over 102 millimeters in about 16 hours. Go ahead. When I started, this work was already done. All those pink lines are from the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, and it's the 100-year flood lines. It's what they use to regulate development proposals within the flood lines. They seek to eliminate losses within those flood areas. And that's 121.4 millimeters in a 24-hour period. And my drain report doesn't affect this. It does in the context, if you look at the very top there, there's flooding just south of the second concession where we're realigning the drain. If the drain is realigned, then obviously these flood lines are no longer correct because they're reflecting a fundamental change in the way this watershed works. But all the rest of those lines at the bottom, my report doesn't change or affect those lines. That stays with the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. Yep, next please. And yes, yep. So as part of this, there was previous work that was constructed under Section 124 of the emergency part of the Drainage Act, where as a response to something bad in the drain that's happened, the city can go in and do works on an emergency basis. That's what was done here. It's 157 meters of construction using concrete blocks to form a hard embankment on the south side of the Wignall Drain at Snyder Road, the south part of Snyder Road. It was requested by the property owner at the abbreviated roll number of 403-800, which is, I'm going to point there. It's in the middle of that diagram. Thank you, Alana. However, it was built on somebody else's property, which is the property to the north. And so there's a bit of a conflict there. And it's also built on the Snyder Road right-of-way. 26.4 meters of it is on the right-of-way. And so the challenge is this is past work that was done, but in this report, it's to be billed out to those that are affected. Can you go one more? Yeah, there. And one more. Those are the two properties, and one more. And so this is what the work looked like. This is in the file folder. These are the photos of construction. And you can see just at the very bottom is a concrete block. And there was a significant amount of effort because everybody knows it's in the bog. So the ground is not very good ground. And so there was a study by a geotechnical engineering firm on how to create a base that these blocks are constructed on. So there was a significant amount of cost in the construction of this work. And as part of this report, that's to be billed out to those affected. Next, please. The other work that was done was at the outlet of the Wignall Drain. And the land changed owners, and the new owner asked that the access for maintenance at the mouth of the drain be changed. And so that was done, and as part of that, it was recognized that under the Drainage Act, we should have a reserve for any right of access to the drain across someone's property. And so there is a payment as an allowance for that reserve, and there's a construction cost for the gravel to create the laneway to the very end. Next, please. And so the petition for requests, as Alana's already stated, anyone can make a petition request under the part of the Drainage Act. In this case, we have 3 requests, all from the city, and it's by the road authority to have sufficient outlet. And I'll go through and describe those. So the first one is the Bauer drain, and the previous drainage superintendent believed it's already a drain, but we couldn't find any evidence that said it was a drain exactly. So we went through this process, which makes it a drain. It makes it a branch drain of the Wignall watershed, called the Bauer drain, which is what he thought it was called in the first place. We're sticking with the same name. So we're really, this exists. We're really doing this as an exercise so that the city can perform maintenance on it at any point in time in the future. And it ensures that the road outlet at that corner has a place for the water to cross an outlet. The second one we're calling the Wignall branch number 2, which is not as good a name as the Bauer drain, but it's what we have. And it's again on the basis of the city signing a petition for sufficient outlet. The drain is just the little part that's at the very end connecting to the Wignall drain, but it drains a significant part of the watershed all the way west of I can't read which road that is. Lorraine. West of Lorraine Road. This is west of Lorraine Road. Part of this is there's an existing corrugated steel pipe that's very close to the house, and this routes a future path for the drain to go around that property and still provide access for runoff from the roadway. And it satisfies the road authority request for sufficient outlet. It's really an investment in the future needs of the roadway requiring drainage. Next one, please. This is Wignall branch number 3. It's further to the east. Again, it's just from Kalali Street down to the drain, and most of the watershed is north of there, draining across the road. I have a picture here. It shows what it looks like. The difficulty here is that, according to my computer analysis, the pipe is too small, and so the city, once this is created as a branch drain, will have to replace the pipe for a bigger pipe. Go ahead. The rest of the report, there's the next part of the report is under section 4, maintenance. A lot of times maintenance will be done in the future and billed out according to the maintenance schedule. But as part of my report, we're doing maintenance on the drain, and that work will be billed out as part of this report. Next, please.
So just ask that everybody just check your phones, make sure there's silence, please. Thank you.
I'm going to step out here and point to this. The part here that's shaded in green that starts just north of the Friendship Trail and goes up to just south of the second concession, that whole green part is proposed as maintenance. And the primary purpose of that maintenance is there's a lot of ash trees that have died and have fallen down and dropped limbs and trunks. That's the predominant maintenance, but there's also regular maintenance where there's excavation to make sure the channel is proper and clean. So, but it's regular maintenance is the main part there. There's not a change in the grade lines per se. In the original RVA reports, it's done in feet and inches, and when I convert those and put it on my map, they don't show up in exactly the same place, but the same grades are there, so this modernizes it, puts it to a new survey standard, and the city will maintain it to those grades in the future. Next, please. This is what that looks like in profile. This drawing's in the report, and you can see that I'm really starting at where there is a positive grade north of that point in the Wignall drain, and I'm ending at the part where the quarry will eventually impact it, and we're realigning the drain. So that is all proposed for maintenance. The bottom part there in the dotted line, we're just doing spot maintenance in there. It's wherever there is an identified problem, Alana will go in and fix that problem, but we're not prescribing a complete cleaning of the drain. It's spot maintenance only. So we've set a budget for that, but it's spot maintenance. Next, please. We have also proposed, and hit one more button, please. 2 sediment basins. This one is just south of, just north of Highway 3, south of the proposed quarry expansion. And so anything north of there that is erosion from a farm or from the quarry's pumping will get trapped in this sediment basin. And this little brown wedge at the front there, this works by causing a change in the velocity in the channel. The channel gets wider, so it slows, and any material that's held in suspension falls out in this pond. And so there's an expectation that the city will maintain the sediment in this pond over time as it slowly fills. Go ahead. The next parts are Section 78 improvements under the Drainage Act. They are things we're proposing to make it work better. Go ahead. The first one is, this is on the left is the existing alignment of the drain going up to the second concession. It ends on the northwest corner of that second concession and Carl Road? Carl Road, yes. And as part of the, ever since I was hired to work on this project, we've known that the quarry was going to expand into this area, and so we've always planned to do this realignment. We can spend money maintaining this older portion, but it'll eventually go away. And so it makes more sense to spend the money moving it and maintaining it in that new location, where it will be afterwards. And so that's what this is showing, is the realignment. All of the costs for this are assigned to the quarry. Alana and I participated in the quarry's application for development, and we had some influence on the plans so that we have maintenance access there that's on the quarry, not on the neighbors. It's really the quarry that's carrying the bucket for these changes, and it ensures that we have all the farms to the north still maintain their sufficient outlet through the drain. Go ahead. This is the quarry's, 2 parts to the quarry. The green line is the lands that will be impacted. The dotted line is the extraction limit. And so the north part is a realignment. The south part is a temporary realignment that will be done at the time when the quarry gets there. So we're doing the north part proactively. The second part is done when the quarry gets to that stage.
I sent you on a mission.
I hope that's not to get my attention.
No, it's if you need to point.
The other part is the wetlands. Originally, that was expected to be less of an impact. It's a significant impact. So much so that where we switch the flow at the end, the MPCA wants a specific kind of blockage there so that they can continue to allow high flows to go in and fill the wetland. The other part we're calling the Bank Restoration Improvement Program, and this is an alternative to the concrete blocks. We can continue to construct concrete blocks. In engineering terms, we're trying to do things in a more natural, we imitate nature instead of just replacing with concrete blocks. And that's what this is. It's bank restoration using natural materials. And it's supposed to be a softer approach than the concrete blocks. And it recognizes that there will be flooding in this area. It's going to exceed the banks, and the natural process, it's part of that cycle. Go ahead. This is basically what it looks like, is instead of blocks, we're using man-sized stones are placed, and then We use vegetation materials along with erosion control blankets, and the roots of that vegetation is intended to hold the bank in place. So it's not a hard approach like concrete blocks. It's a softer approach using vegetation. If you go to the next one, please. This is an example, and it's from Huron County from last summer. And it's very hard to see, but Alana, if you point to the little sprigs in front there, this is called live stakes. And instead of putting a potted shrub in place, they have these stakes are cut, they get root growth on them, and you take a metal rod and you make a hole in the ground, you stick the stake in there and you step it on. And some of them take, and as you can see here, some of them don't take. It's a planting approach, but those shrubs, it's, I'm gonna forget. Dogwood. Dogwood is a typical variety. That's the red one that we're seeing here. It's the roots of that shrub that holds the bank in place. In this case here, up in Huron County, this is constructed with very specific gravel in the middle because it's brown trout nesting habitat. We don't. Well, it's meant to be a natural embankment, and so there isn't grass cutting intended along the edge of it, which is, you know, like that's the idea of an alternative to the concrete block. The concrete block, you can cut grass right up to it. It's a choice. And so we don't have brown trout that we have to worry about the kind of gravel in the middle of the stream. Next, please. Next, please. This is where the concrete block was constructed, and one more. And this is where we're proposing at an owner's request to use the natural bank. Sorry, this is the, if you look to the far right, that's where the outlet crosses Lakeshore Road. And if you look to the far left of this slide, that's the Snyder Road allowance. Oh, that has the concrete block? Okay. And so this owner down here has asked, can you click, go back one, please? Back. No, forward, sorry. So this work is constructed in the stream, so it has to be blocked from the flow of water, so it's constructed in the dry. And the Department of Fisheries and Oceans has very strict rules about how you can do that and when you can do that. We follow those rules. Next, please. The other Section 78 improvement is at the gate itself. This is the Wignall Gate. And generally speaking, mechanically, it works. It's not broken. It's just mechanically, it works. It goes up and down, but there are some deficiencies with it. Number one is that when it is closed, sometimes it floods over the top of it, even though it is closed at its maximum height. The two on the right side there were extended in the past, and they are a taller gate than the one on the left. That's where the pump block was. The one in the middle no longer seals to the bottom. There's an opening there, and we know that it flows through because this is. We can't see it. We can survey and measure what that point is. And the proposal is to create a concrete sill with a small extension at the bottom of this gate so that it seals at the bottom. We'll do both gates. And the other part is it's automated with electricity, but it's a manual switch. And so someone has to go out here and turn the switch on for it to open and turn the switch for it to close. And we're proposing that we'll put sensors on it, and the gate, when the lake starts to run it backwards, it'll close itself. It'll figure out that the lake is pushing the water back upstream, and it will close. And then when the rain comes and it switches around the other way, it'll open again. and the water will go back out. And the response time using an actuator is much improved over the electric motors that are there. The two pipes in the middle were put in for in-stream submersible pumps at some point. This predates me by a long time, but my understanding is they never worked particularly well. And right now it prevents the gate from opening all the way. And so those pipes get removed so that we can open the gate as high as possible. So if you go to the next one, please.
Excuse me. When you put those sensors in, will you do a capability study to make sure that it's working over a reasonable amount of time?
So yes, there is, as part of that, a process in the specifications that we call site acceptance testing. And so that is an expected outcome that we'll do that. With the lake being there, we're doing the best possible with what we think could happen, but there's some cases with wintertime and icing conditions that are a little difficult to exactly predict, but the sensors that we've picked are not affected by moisture or other things. They're not floats. They don't actually touch the water to do a measurement. It's a reflection. I can explain that with some drawings later if you'd like to see that.
Can I ask you to hold your questions, please, until the end, because this is a public meeting, we can't pick up what you're saying unless you're at a mic. So we'll just ask you to wait till the end. Thanks.
Okay, so the second part of this is that this block on the left represents Lakeshore Road and the bridge that's there. At some point, that bridge will have to be replaced. And immediately downstream of it, very close, are the existing gates. And the existing gates, because of where the pump was constructed in concrete, it eliminated one of the three gates. The remaining two gates, when they're fully open, just barely let enough water get out to the lake. It's a significant restriction. In order for it to work, the velocity of the water has to dramatically increase. It's not the best way that it works. So at some point in time in the future, these gates and the bridge will probably get replaced at the same time. It's not now. And so we're doing this work to make it work better now. And we're using equipment that could still be used in the future gate that gets constructed. But that's a future occurrence that'll happen. Go ahead. And click one more, please. Yeah, so this is the one improvement. It's the extension of the bottom so that it seals and doesn't let water run backwards even when it's closed. Next one, please. This is the other one. Next one. This is our proposed, when everything's closed, we can seal to 176.5. The predicted height of the flood is coming in bigger than that for the 1 in 100 year case. But that's a long risk. It happened in the not too distant past when the lake was at its peak and there was a big storm. So it has happened in recent memory, but by the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, NPCA, it's a low risk event. With this closed, most storms will not overtop it. Next, please. And then the other one is we want to be able to open everything to 175.2. That's fully open, and that just barely lets rainwater from the watershed get out through the channels that are there. North of here, under the bridge, it's adequate capacity. South of here, the channel that goes to the lake through the dunes is also adequate capacity. It's just in this one place that it's a greater flow restriction than in engineering we would like. Next, please. Oh, one last one. Yeah. Go ahead. On top of here, where the original pump used to be, that's now identified by the NPCA as a flood-proof line that's higher than that pump mount. So if the pump was to go back there, it would have to be raised above that level above the flood-proof line in order for it to go back in place. We can't put it back the way it used to be. Go ahead, please. This is what happens as we switch the electrical motors out for new actuators on the top. The threaded rod stems remain in place, and there's a computer control case that goes off to the side that the sensors hook up to. Next, please. This is the upstream flood condition. It's the 1 in 100 year event. It doesn't matter what we do, this is what flooding looks like when it's trying to get out, and we want the gates open as much as possible. Next, please. Now this is when the storm is going backwards. The little blue blip at the bottom is the predicted maximum flood. 176.8 is the elevation. So it would be a foot over the top of our closed gates. So it's the extreme condition, but that's the extent of the area that would be affected. Next, please. This is the basics of the control of the gates, and it's pretty simple. When it's higher on one side of the gate, the lake's trying to go backwards, so it closes fully. When it's closed, and on the north side, north of the road, it's higher than the lake, it opens. Next, please. We are going to have pumping capability there. On the very bottom left is the existing pipe that crosses under the road. It's on the north side of Lakeshore East, and we're putting this collar with a pipe connect on it, and this is the city's portable pump. It's on a trailer, so it gets backed into this area, and there can still be pumping on an emergency basis, on an as requested basis. But we're not proposing to put a pump back that goes on and off whenever the gates are closed. We're expecting that the gates are optimized so that we get the best out of this without a pump. And the main reason for this is that the original market gardens, there were 5 farms that paid for the pump, and they don't exist anymore. They're all owned by a company, and those lands are abandoned, not being farmed. And so there's, from myself as a drainage engineer, I don't see the benefit in putting a pump back at close to $250,000 for farms that aren't needing pumping anymore. Next, please. This is what it looks like now. Next, please. This is what the actuator looks like that will go on in its place. It's not off to one side. It gets mounted on top of the stand that's there. Next, please. So our estimated cost of construction is close to $1 million in round terms. The previous constructed works is $250,000 in round terms, and about $400,000 in engineering and administration costs. There's allowances of about $18,000. Wherever we've had to move the drain or do something with it and we take property, we pay an allowance. Unless in the Corey's expansion case, the drain used to run there and now it's just following a different path, we're doing a 1-for-1 switch in land there. There's no payment made for allowance. So the total cost is $1.6 million. Next, please. This is the breakdown of the admin and engineering costs. A debenture was taken out from 2007 to 2017. The total debenture cost is almost $30,000. 17 of that is allocated to the 2007 block wall project, and the debenture administrative fee of $3,500 is allocated to the block wall project. And on top of that, there's HST for my engineering fee that gets added to that. The debenture and the debenture fee both get charged to the 2007 project, but the HST is spread over the whole project. The past engineers' work that was done, Weeb was paid $53,000 before they went bankrupt. AMEC was paid $38,000. This is half of that fee because in the previous reports, I was directed by council to only charge half the fee to this project. And the rest of that is my fee for the preparation of it, plus the city had CAD time in it. There's a tendering and contracted min reserve. All of this is a budget, and the actual is what will get billed out. Next, please. This is the estimate cost of construction. The petition for the three works, the Bower Drain, the Wignall Branch 2, the Wignall Branch 3, are $24,000. There's the drain maintenance work, that green line that runs through there, is estimated at $212,000. The gate improvement is a significant expense for the computer control and the gate automation, $388,000. There's interval 1 and 4. These are the realignments. The interval 4 is the spot maintenance. Interval 1 is the realignment, which is pretty much the quarry's cost is what is being picked up. And then there's a construction management cost and a contingency allowance. That's where we get $1 million worth of work. Next, please. I'm going to go through this very quickly. Wherever we take lands, it's $10,000 an acre. If I look at the land reports now, that's when I started this 6 years ago. Agricultural land's probably a bit more than that now, but I've stuck to this $10,000 an acre for allowances. We don't have damages, Section 38, and we don't have land for work zones here, Section 29, except where we did it on the outlet, and that is actually paid as land taken. Next, please. This one is Section 31 where private drains are incorporated, and we do have this in 2 cases on the Wignall where there's an existing channel that was there. These are the branch drains. There's already a channel there. We're taking it over, and so it's presumed that that owner of land created that channel, and we pay them for what was done previously. Next, please. I don't have any land improvements in here. So there's no assessments for land improvements because the drain has existed almost forever, and there's nothing really changing that makes people grow bigger, better soybeans. Everything is pretty much on the basis of outlet liability and outlet benefit, which I'll talk about in another minute. There are some special benefits. 50% of culvert costs are assigned to a couple, and the special benefit for the quarry, that's their piece is assigned as a special benefit. And then there's a Section 26 where the roads are assigned. So the culvert replacement on Kalali Street is 100% the city's cost as a Section 26 assessment. Next, please. The Section 23 assessment, this slide is directly from the Port Colborne drain. So it's been discussed at the tribunal. Everybody pays for how much water runs off their land and occupies a part of the drain. And they pay on the basis of that peak that's flowing off of theirs. And if you have a property and it's all pavement, you would be expecting to pay more than someone who has all moss and sponge, for example. And as an engineer, we try to reflect that change in how much water is coming off the land by using industry accepted values. That is this C factor down here where it says C equals 25, C equals 30, or C equals 30. Those get varied based on the property classification in the calculation of your share of an area basis. The bigger your property, the more you pay. The smaller your property, the less you pay. Next, please. As the summary, the past work from 2007 is an assessment I've included. The petition for request by Road Authority creates 3 new branch drains, the Bower Wignall Branch number 2 Wignall Branch number 3. Section 74 is mostly maintenance through the middle of the drain. Section 78, there's a bank restoration improvement program proposed for one property using natural methods. The drain realignment is paid for by the quarry. There are 2 sediment basins constructed in this. There's an outlet access reserve and gravel lane that was already done that's included in the report. And there's a proposed outlet gate improvement that does not put the original pump that was there back. And this report's prepared in compliance with the Drainage Act of Ontario. So what's next? This chart is from my engineering manual for the Drainage Act. And one more button there, please, Diana. That's what I've been doing all this time, and we're here now at, next button, at the council meeting to hear the report. And from this, these other pathways are if you're going to register an appeal or you want your assessment reconsidered. And I'm going to check there. Yeah, that green button with the arrow, the second one, is called the Court of Revision. And that's the meeting after this one. And that's where we can change assessments based on arguments that you present here and now or present at that meeting for council's consideration. Council's consideration of the report now is just if they feel I've addressed all of what was originally assigned to me as scope to prepare, which is documented in the baseline report, or they can tell me to change any part of it. They can't tell me how to do the engineering, but they can tell me that they'd like some part of it done differently than what I've done thus far. And last button, these are appeals to the tribunal, and there's different reasons why you would go to the tribunal. That's what's shown here is those differences in reasons. And one more click. And then the last one is how it proceeds if there's no, or even if there is a trip to tribunal. Go ahead, next. And that concludes my presentation. And happy to take questions from council.
Thank you, Mr. Marsh. Any councillors have questions? Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm going to start out by being concerned that we've allotted you an hour and we've taken up 51 minutes. And that doesn't seem fair. And we have other business on the agenda, so I don't know. You asked me if I have any questions. I do. I'm sure my colleagues do. I'm sure those people do. So based on what the chair's decision is to when we have to go, I would hope that we would allow a full night at another time to do this, but maybe we'll get through some of it. Mr. Marsh, my first question is, you mentioned all of the time spent by 2 previous drainage engineers, and when you took over was 2018. So my question, because all of that money is either going to have to be waived, assessed, whatever, but somehow the bill always ends up having to get paid. So my first question is, of what value on the engineering side, when you picked up in 2018, was there anything you were able to garner, or was it just like you started at the beginning if you had been signed at that time? Both because of the time delay and what's changed in the drain, but I'm really trying to get at pre-18, because you're not responsible for that, and there's nobody here from the engineering or billing side that can speak to that. So, like, what would you say the value from an engineering point of view you were able to salvage from prior to your time?
Strangely enough, this question has been asked before, and I tried to dodge it at that time because it's very hard to give you a percentage of what I've made use of. I reviewed all of the information that had previously been assembled by the other engineers. Some of it I agreed with and some of it I disagreed with, as well as the city disagreed with some of it that had been prepared. We did not start with a clean slate. I have made use of all of the survey work that was done previously by both engineers. as much as is possible, and you can see some of the survey points from the previous engineer on the drawings. And so every place where I could make use of something, I did. Not all of it that was handed over was useful. What percentage of that would be, I don't really know how that could work out. There was one subcontractor report for a biology assessment of plant materials along the drain. I didn't use any of that.
Okay. I might circle back to that later or at some later point, because I think somehow I'd like to see a number put on that. Also previous to your arrival on the scene, so there was mentioned there was some emergency work done, and there was some clearing done, and I'm wondering if we would, maybe not tonight, but or Alana, if we could isolate that for future discussion. And finally, for now, you mentioned along the way these concrete blocks and the petitioning of 2 homeowners, and you used the words, those affected. So can I assume that what you're saying is that work petitioned by those 2 homeowners at the time were completed, there was a cost to them, and would it only be those 2 people? Would it be the whole drainage shed? Like, what did you mean by that?
Diana, can you go back to that section? Just keep going backwards.
Tell me when.
Yep. Right there. So, Councillor Bruno, I'm going to just step out here and point to this, and I apologize because I know you can't see what I'm pointing at. But in the top left is where the drain switches from heading south, and it heads east along the bottom of this alignment. And that concrete blocks were put there in part because the drain's trying to turn a corner. And so by its natural tendency, it's eroding that outside bank. And so this is constructed to stop that process from continuing on and constantly eroding a more natural curve. Constantly eroding a natural curve, and it's a sharp left. And this concrete block is really meant to reinforce that and keep that in place. And
So is that to the benefit of the whole drain or just a particular?
So that's where I was going.
Okay.
The owners that are south of there, that's none of their doing. That's the natural act of the drain trying to get to the outlet. And so it's their property that's being protected, which they do get a benefit from, but it's at the cause of the drain turning a corner. And so in my report, I have said that where there's something occurring in the drain, nothing that the owners have done on either side, that a portion of the cost related to the benefit is paid by the owner, but the majority of it, in this case because it's so close to the outlet, all the rest of the drain pays as a liability because it's their water that's trying to make that corner turn. And in this case, that ratio is 12% to the 3 benefiting landowners of the total cost, and 88% to the rest of the watershed.
So that,
Thank you, Diana.
Stay there, Paul, or
Yep.
sit down. So we have no registered delegates, but is there anyone in attendance from the public who would like to speak? So we have no registered delegates, but is anyone in attendance who would like to speak? Alicia? Gail? Did you want? Okay, Alicia first, then Gail, then Harry, then Jack. Okay.
Just-
Alicia, did you come up? You may have to sit down, because she needs to get a mic, so
Yeah,
she
I'm
needs to
going to
use your
sit down.
mic.
I'm just
Oh,
going to
okay.
point out, if you come up
Okay.
here for a second. So this red button means that you're on
Okay.
and everybody can hear.
So I don't have to press it.
And if you state your name and address, please, Alicia.
Okay, I'm Alicia Arnold. I live at 503 Snyder Road. My property is the one of the three detailed in the Wignell Banks erosion section. I just want to say I was not the property owner at the time that any of this construction took place. The report states that a complaint was brought to the city's attention in 2004, which is 2 decades ago. After the inspection and a study, the block was installed. The work was done prematurely of the report actually being complete or adopted, and was based on a decision made by the engineer, not the homeowner. The report states there was an inspection in 2022, it's 15 years after the wall was installed, that there is some evidence of cracking and spalling that may require replacement as part of maintenance work. I can tell you for the last 12 years I've lived there, there has been no maintenance done on that wall at all. I completely understand that owning a home, there are a lot of costs associated with it, and proper upkeep and maintenance requires money. I've already spent upwards of $25,000 to remove 30-year-old trees at the city's request because the cemetery thought they might fall. I did this without hesitation or objection. I spent other thousands of dollars after the storm we had in 2022 to remove 7 trees that fell because of the soft land in that area. Several fell right into the drain, but I did that at my own expense. For all my career, I've worked in industries that require payment for services rendered, and I appreciate that sometimes billing can get lost in the mail or come way after the fact, but I cannot wrap my mind around a company collecting from outstanding service from almost 20 years ago. Now there might be more payments coming to keep it where it is. That's it. Thank you.
Alicia, before you go, any questions? Good job. Great. Yeah. Name and address?
Gail Babian, 975 Chippewa Road, Port Colborne. I really don't have anything prepared. There's a lot of things I don't understand with the report. I would just like to say that I don't understand why my property, I understand that the bigger the property, the more you have to pay. That's understandable. My assessment is at 35, that number 35. I didn't see that on the screen. It wasn't one of the 3 options that were listed up there. I don't know what that means.
Those were examples.
Oh, just examples?
They're just examples.
What is 35 then? Is that for agricultural land?
It's a little bit.
All crimes right.
35 is a bit higher than agricultural land, or it's the same as agricultural land. Depending on the agricultural land, it can be 30, it can be 35. So soil composition can affect it. But to give you an example, if it's a roadway, it's a 95, or in the case of a gravel road, it's 85. So most of the time, it's between that 25 and 35 range.
Okay. So my understanding is that the water that comes down Second Concession Road to Babian Road, because that's my property right at the corner, at the northwest corner, it does a 90-degree and goes directly down the west side of Babian Road. It's a big, deep, deep ditch. It goes down to the box culvert and it goes into the quarry and then along the quarry property, inside the quarry property and crosses on number 3 highway and goes from there. This Wignell drain report now, does that change anything? Like, why am I being assessed for the Port Colborne branch and the Wignell when I don't think the Wignell encompasses the Port Colborne, but I don't understand the correlation between the two?
Yeah, so you are in you are in the unenviable position of paying into 2 drains, which does happen. You know, our farm does the same. Not in Port Colborne, though. And it's because your water uses the Wignell to get out to the lake. And so you're paying a portion of that cost for your water to get to the lake, and you pay a portion for the cost of your water to get from your property to the outlet of the Port Colborne drain at the Wignall drain. And so they're two different reports, two different parts. We could have done it all together, but it would have amounted to the same thing.
Okay.
Well, it actually sounds like she is.
Hey, excuse me, sir. Not your cake.
So, I don't know what else to say, but I don't know how I'm going to pay the bill, that's all.
Harry, I think I had your notes, thanks.
Thank you. My name is Harry Wells. I live at 548 Highway 3 East, Port Colborne. I've been living there for, I don't know, 70 years now almost. So anyway, my drain connects up through the Port Colborne drain. Like Gail's, I have the pay for twice the contribution. So, but I have a couple questions in regards to what we heard tonight. Paul, you had said that the gates, when they're the new ones that when they're installed, will not let all of the rain through. They're small enough that they will retain some of the rain back during a storm. Is that correct?
It refers to the modeling by the NPCA about the peak flow getting out to the lake. And there's more flow than there is space through the gates. If we could go back and do something different, we wouldn't construct that pump station in gate number 3 spot. We would move it out of the way and reserve 3 gates to be open. As it is, it works, but it doesn't work overly well. And in the 100-year case, it is definitely slowing the water up. That's what you can see between that gigantic pink blob north of it and the skinny blue blob south of it.
So the answer in layman's terms is yes, the gates are too small to handle a 100-year storm.
Yes, the
Okay.
gates are too
What
They're
is,
okay for the 5-year storm.
okay. What is the pump capacity that would be planned to be put in place?
Well, that pump was a picture from maybe 4 years ago, and it's a 6 or 8 inch pump, and so it's right in around at maybe 100 liters per second. I'm not sure I can't do that in gallons per minute off my head.
Okay.
But the original one was about 350 liters per second for comparison. It's a smaller capacity pump that would be on a trailer and used in that same spot.
And would that pump capacity be able to accommodate the hold back of the gates?
To the 100-year storm? No.
Okay.
Neither would the original pump either.
Okay. With regards to the pump, and this is probably not a question you can answer, Paul, but it might go to Alana, maybe. You're looking to put in a portable pump or an emergency pump. Is that going to be dedicated to that drain? Or is that going to be one that may be over at the E.G. Marsh drain when we need it over at the Wignall drain?
Who's going to turn it on?
So I don't know the exact answer to that question. I know that we have 3 pumps in our deployment right now, and I know that they are frequently used. If need be, there are several rental companies around that if we do need one for an extended period of time, typically we know when the large storms are coming, so we would be able to prepare for it slightly.
But I guess the question comes in is, are we going to do that? And are those rental companies going to be accessible when we need them? Are those pumps guaranteed for Port Colborne when we need it? Or are those pumps going to be put onto the stormwater sewer system, which we have problems for? So there's a lot of problems with regards to pump availability that I see that could enter into this formula of handling that water.
It's a great point, and we're not identifying that it's a dedicated pump. It's when you need it. And so your question's a very valid question, but we don't have the answer today. The only answer is if the city was to say and pay one and dedicate it, but that cost should then be charged to the watershed if it's going to be dedicated to only the watershed's use.
Okay. My last question is, the calculations that were used in regards to the 100-year storm and the sizing of the gates and everything else, did they include Port Colborne Quarry's permit to take water, which is something that would be in addition to normal rainwater because it is pumping groundwater as well?
When I first started, I had a brief look at the NPCA's modeling, and it does not represent the pumping from the quarry. There's a very large, it's not a really finely cut model. There's a couple of big blobs representing the land, like maybe 5. And so that calculates how big the runoff is. And those blobs are bigger than the quarry, and so the pumping isn't represented specifically.
Okay.
It's a rainfall runoff model. It takes into consideration the elevation at the lake, but it's really predicting the amount of water that's coming off at a couple of key locations, north of Highway 3, Kalali, and at the Friendship Trail, and then calculates, using fairly precise calculations, what the elevation of the water would be at each of those places.
So that additional water would cause even more stress in regards to the release from the gates during a storm situation.
The quarry probably holds water back in the event of a rainstorm because it falls into the quarry and only comes out with pumping. But there would be lots of problems south of there if we have a 100-year storm.
But there's no guarantee that the water, that the quarry is being impacted on the quarry will not be pumped out. There's nothing within the drain model, there's nothing in an agreement.
No.
There's nothing there that
But the quarry
precludes that.
Quarry's pumps are a fraction of what the runoff from a 100-year storm would be as well. They're a tiny amount compared to the 100-year runoff.
They're over 6 inches in diameter.
Yep.
So they're going to be as big, or if not bigger, than the emergency pumps that we would be getting from a rental place.
Yep.
Okay, that was my questions. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alana.
Jack?
Okay, I understand the issue for a 1-hour scheduled meeting on a court, a meeting to consider. My first comment is similar to Ms. Babian, that the branches don't have their own assessment schedule. And I understand the drain has been renamed from the Michener to the Wignall, and that makes it the main drain. And my property and Babian property are Port Colborne branch. But a question for Mr. Marsh, are any of the costs of maintenance from the confluence of those two to Carl Road attributed to the Port Colborne drain watershed? And table 11 is the maintenance schedule, and does that table include all the costs, whether they be on the outlet from the Friendship Trail South or from the Friendship Trail to Carl Road, are they charged to the entire watershed, including the Michener and the Port Colborne drain?
So the assessment is not in the maintenance schedule. The maintenance schedule is set up for future maintenance to be billed. The identified maintenance under Section 74 in the Act is north of the Friendship Trail, and only those properties connecting north of that lowest point where the maintenance is being done, roughly 2,450 meters from the gate, and north of there, that's assessed to all the properties that drain into the drain north of that point. There's intervals set up. The gate is billed to everybody in the whole watershed.
Yep.
But it's segregated depending on what work's done. But the maintenance that's proposed is billed to everyone north of that chainage marker 2,450.
So everybody, including Port Colborne drain and Wignall?
No, the Port Colborne drain is south of the Friendship Trail, so it's not included in that.
The confluence is
The confluence
south?
is south of there, like it's south
How about
of,
Table 11? Table 11, which is the
maintenance schedule?
the maintenance schedule.
Yeah, so for the whole watershed, Port Colborne would be in, but for the section for maintenance that's dealing with north of the Friendship Trail, Port Colborne drain would not be in that. It would have its own maintenance schedule, which it does.
Well, my property is on the Port Colborne watershed, and it shows up in Table 11.
Where it's for maintenance to be done on the whole watershed, yes, because you're in the whole watershed. But for the section that's...
We have a counselor here from Wainfleet. Wainfleet has just undertaken a assessment of their Wainfleet South consolidated drainage system. It has tons of finger drains. Every finger of that assessment schedule has its own assessment table. So, and that's done under the Drainage Act. If I'm not contributing if I'm contributing water to the Port Colborne drain, but not to the portion of the Wignall north of the Friendship Trail that goes to Carl Road, then why am I paying anything towards that component, that what you call interval?
As I said, you're not. You're not in the interval where
But
those costs are being charged.
But on Table 11, I am. I have 5.4 hectares, and the Table 11 says 5.4 hectares, which is attributed to all work in the watershed, the entire watershed. I don't mind paying for the reach from the Friendship Trail south to the lake, including the bank rehabilitation, the stabilization. I'm responsible for it because some of my water runs through there. But I don't feel that I should be paying for maintenance, say, next to Bud's small engine, because it is a separate reach, and it should have a separate assessment schedule. And I know we've had this discussion before. We will have this discussion again, because as Wainfleet has addressed it, their consolidated drainage system includes something like 48 separate assessment tables. And this drain, which covers over 1,000 hectares, has one maintenance assessment schedule, which I find is contradictory to the Drainage Act.
So Jack, I'm going to interrupt you for a minute. Paul, can we not deal with that part of, if Jack feels that he is charged wrongly at the Court of Revision? Is that?
Well, I was going to suggest that Jack and I can look at that maintenance schedule afterwards and confirm or resolve how it's presented. Because I know that maintenance schedule is a large, ugly, complicated schedule.
Yeah,
So just to say
it's not just me.
Right.
It is everybody in my neighbor across the road.
Okay.
Same thing. Everybody in the watershed north of the Friendship Trail is treated in that same lump sum where there are separate drainage areas with separate costs in each. And some portions of drains next to steep embankments require more maintenance than those on flat surfaces. So I think that there's a serious issue with a lump sum assessment schedule. And that was just a question. I haven't gotten to my presentation yet. This does not deal with assessments. This deals with drain design. Between 5 and 10 minutes. Okay, well, we've heard some of this already, and this deals with the drain realignment that the quarry is paying for. But under what basis was that drain realignment necessary? Why was it requested? And what consideration was given to whether it was necessary? Reasons for not going along with that. The license application isn't approved, so it's for a realignment to get around property that hasn't been licensed yet. If the license is given and it includes the northern tab, which this drain is going around, they won't get to it for 40 years. On the east tab, they're going to do the realignment when they get there, and then they're going to take it back to its old alignment after they're done. Why can't they do exactly the same thing on the north end and leave it alone for 40 years till they get there? After they get there, do a small realignment, mine out what they have access to, and then rehabilitate it and restore it back to where it is. It'll only take about 3 months to do that little north tab of quarry excavation because there's minimal. By their estimates, there's about 230,000 tons in there. They have a license for 1 million, so it's 0.23 of a year that it will take to do that tab. That realignment, mining, rehabilitation can all be done in one season. The realignment is going to require a dam at Carl Road and Second Concession with a Hickenbottom weir to control the water level. Every fall, they have to put a dam in, and every spring they have to remove the dam. And that's not just for the life of the quarry. That's the quarry life. They're going to have to do it 40 years before the water runs through the drain. But that dam is going to have to be removed and replaced forever, after 40 years, after 80 years, forever. And who's going to pay for it at the end? Another significant issue. When the Babian Road drain was relocated east of Babian Road to the quarry property, east of the quarry, or east of Babian Road, I specifically asked, is that being done for safety? And you said, I was given the answer, yes, it's unsafe to have a municipal drain along a road. Can you pull up the picture, that image in my file? That photo, that curve, is taken from Carl Road looking east. That's where they propose to put a municipal drain. It's going to have to be at least 1.5 meters deep, right at the culvert where it crosses from the north to the south, and it goes east. The road rises, the ditch has to fall, so that 1.5 meter deep ditch is going to be even deeper alongside a road, and it's not safe based on the Babian Road argument. So does the city want a dangerous drain right alongside their road? because they are going to put themselves at risk. And lastly, when this whole project started, you saw the baseline report. The baseline report included an assessment by Dugan and Associates on the environmental impact, and this drain is being realigned around a wetland rather than allowing it to continue to flow as it has 150 years, and they want to reroute it. Those trees are part of the wetland, actually, and Dugan wasn't consulted for their input on the impact of doing this realignment. NPCA, from my knowledge, and from what I've read, NPCA wasn't consulted, MNRF wasn't consulted, even Port Colborne EAC wasn't consulted on whether this sounds like a good idea. I'll just take my 5 minutes. All of the documents that back this up, the mitigation and monitoring that's going to be required in that wetland, the study is included in the files, and there are 11 monitoring and mitigation requirements, and in the conclusion it says if this method is followed, there will be minimal impact. Why expose yourself to any impact if you can just avoid it all? Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. And Paul, you'll meet with Jack.
Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. Jack Helling, Highway 3, 770 Highway 3, Port Colborne.
Thank you very much. Okay, Council. And I can assure you that at the council meeting coming up, I'll be asking that we have our drainage meetings on our off Monday and start at 6:30 so that everybody can get here at a reasonable time. Sometimes there's not much involved and it goes pretty quick. Other times it needs more time than we have here. So I apologize for that, but if we do have to if we have to adjourn this and go to another meeting, I don't think Paul's going to work for nothing. He bills the city and the city bills you guys for the drain. So that's just the way it works. So that's why we're trying to get it to a reasonable time, but for tonight anyways. Good. Okay, Council.
Sorry, through you, Chair. So how are we ending this meeting? Like,
We're going to end it by voting for or against the bylaw.
without having the answers to some of those questions, or?
It's up to council how they want to do this. It's up to council how they want to do this. So.
But his questions aren't related to the fees.
Right.
So they wouldn't be answered at the Court of Revision, correct?
So, Paul, can you help us out here? Jack's questions. I got mine on.
The fees are part of the Court of Revision. It's how they're assessed can be reviewed. It was previously in the other courts of revision. So if you want to change how they're billed in the assessment, it's within your purview to do that. What you can't do at the Court of Revision is make changes in the design. So Jack is making an argument the realignment isn't required. So it's kind of you choose whether you want that or not want that. That process he's talking about there has been through the Pits and Quarries Act, more so than the Drainage Act. The information that he's quoting in there is from the quarries application to Pits and Quarries approval. The Drainage Act, we were participating in those, and we're anticipating that alignment solves a future problem. But he's right, it's in the far future. But it will be consumed. The drain will be consumed by the quarries expansion.
So then the realignment that's through the wetland that Jack was talking about, that's at the expense of the quarry? Or is it part of the
It's
watershed?
at the expense of the quarry pays for the entire realignment.
Okay. Like, I'm just concerned that the information that Jack brought to us, which we unfortunately are cutting off because of how this meeting was set up, that I don't think that he got to have a fair chance at asking his questions. That's my only concern.
My question wasn't along the lines of Councillor Aquilina. It's a good one, and maybe needs further debate. But in terms of, like, Ms. Arnold, the whole issue of assessment, what happened before, all of this information, if I'm understanding Mr. Marsh right, that this is about the engineering and design. So if council felt that some of these things that went on 15 or 20 years ago shouldn't be the responsibility of their interest on the debenture, and someone is being piled on, including the drain to come, is that at court of revision, or is that here?
Well, you can do it here. You can direct me to make revisions here and revise my report and bring it back again. But at the court of revision, you can make changes in how the assessment is done only. You cannot change the proposed design of the works. But the past works is not in my report other than to acknowledge it was done in the past, and I have done my best to use the Drainage Act to assess the costs that I was asked to assess.
I'm just getting a little mixed message there. If council wants to do something about that particular work, it doesn't. Tonight is not the only time it can do that.
Correct. The court of revision, you can change. The court of revision, you can change the amount that was assessed. So, for example, you could say that the city chooses to eat the debenture and the fee. You could choose the city prorates the amount of work that was done to some lesser amount. Or you could wipe it out completely. It's at your discretion. But neither of us can go back and say that we'd like to do the engineering different in 2007.
I'm fine with that then. Thank you.
So the recommendation of this report is as follows: that Public Works Department Report 2024-85 be received, and that the mayor and the acting clerk be directed to execute a bylaw to provisionally adopt the Wignall Municipal Drain Engineers Report dated February 9th, 2024, prepared by Paul Marsh, PN of EWA Engineering, Inc., under Section 4 and 78, Chapter D, 17 of the Drainage Act, RSO 1990. And we also have to appoint councillors to the Court of Revision. So, volunteers on that?
Sorry, I am so sorry that we're dragging this on.
Yep.
I just want to make sure that the rest of Jack's questions, he has 8 questions that, like, those can be asked at the Court of Revision. Like, if I'm voting to pass this, that there's a chance that he can have his say at the Court of Revision, even though they're not. I know this is where I'm like, I feel like we've crunched this meeting into a tight spot, and anyway.
And I would suggest then that you ask council to consider reconvening at a future date. And if council wants to do it, we will. If they don't want to do it, then we'll vote on this tonight. And we'll figure out all the dollar amounts at the Court of Revision.
Okay, can I do that then, please?
Sure.
Okay, sorry. I don't know how to do that, but that's what I want to
The
do.
clerk's going to help you out.
Okay.
If you could move a motion to reconvene this meeting, or well, adjourn this meeting and reconvene, and I would suggest, let me see, the next one would be May 7th, I think I'm looking at. It's an open week, but it's a public meeting, so that's when we would schedule it for, and that would give us the time that we need. I don't believe that we have anything else scheduled that evening, so the time that's needed would be available.
6:30?
Yeah. Okay.
I believe the drainage superintendent wants to say something.
Lana?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, do we have to provide another mailing to all of the members of the watershed?
That certainly is a significant cost, isn't it?
Yes?
Should we have got something in the mail?
Yes.
No, we didn't get anything. We own acres and acres of land there.
Everyone assessed in the report, there was a mailing that was sent out addressed to each.
You didn't get us.
Thank you for coming.
Last time you didn't send it to me either. You stuffed it in a
Okay.
mailbox in a place we don't even live.
Whatever,
Mail it.
we'll discuss that
Lana,
after.
yes,
Should've discussed
please
it.
get the right address and then we'll see what goes on. So who makes that decision on the mailing? Because I think legally you need to do that, don't you?
Yes.
I'm looking at you guys because I'm not quite sure. Paul?
Yes, but it uses whatever mailing address is in the system.
Sure, but we would have to, you got to put your mic on again too. But we were required to remail to everybody, right? And then that's charged back against the watershed.
Didn't happen to us.
That's correct, that everyone in the watershed requires notice under the act.
Okay. If we vote to go that way, then I'm hearing that that's what you have to do. Yes. Remail.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to the clerk, I would suggest that at least a month then, in order to get the mailing out.
That was my next question through your chair, was how much time is required under the legislation. So if you're going to need more time than just get us to May 4th. You had also indicated that Court of Revision you were scheduling for somewhere near the end of May, and also a training session. So we would need to take a look at that, but we can do that tomorrow as well. We don't need to do that this evening. So what would we be looking at insofar as for your 20 days? Is that what your notice period is?
The act says 10 days from the last date of the mailing.
Okay.
So assuming I can get the notification out next week, I would recommend at least 3 weeks
Okay.
to setting the next meeting date.
The 21st. May 21st? I think that's what we're looking at.
Does that give you enough time, Luana? Yes. Yep, it does. Councilor Bruno?
I just wanted to confirm that that's an off week.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Further questions, Alana? No? Okay.
So
Okay,
if I may, Deputy Mayor, if Councillor Aquilina would like to move a motion that we adjourn and reconvene to a further meeting to complete on May 21st at 6:30 p.m.
everybody understand?
Need a seconder?
Councilor Bacon?
Bagu, okay.
Okay, all in favor? Carried.
Carried.
Okay, we'll reconvene on the 21st of May. Reconvene
May 21st
May 21st
at 6:30 PM.
at 6:30 PM.
Okay.
And that's it, then. No bylaws, no nothing, right?
That's right.
Yep.
We're done.
Okay, we're adjourned. Okay.